Hey folks, this is Kalani. The public test realm for our next content patch has been updated quite considerably and has actually had a character wipe, so if you log in and find you have no characters on the PTR, that's why. This usually only happens when the dev team is ready to test significant portions of the patch experience as they will be implemented on live servers. Basically, we're getting close to this being a good picture of what the final product will look like. The updates include details about how we get our hands on the new legendary Cloak that will play a huge part of your character progression in patch 8.3, as well as how we upgrade the Cloak to help us fend off corruption a bit better. The entire introduction experience is available for testing, and we have some changes to the corrupted gear feature as well. Let's jump right in. The legendary Cloak is probably what most of you are interested in right now. How does the Cloak work? How do we actually get it? Is this another huge long quest chain that ends in a legendary, so we won't even see it until we're halfway to the next expansion? The exact opposite, actually. A lot of patch 8.3's features, like the horrific visions of N'Zoth, actually require the legendary Cloak before you can take part in them. With that being the case, it's not too surprising that the legendary Cloak is actually one of the first things you get in patch 8.3. Partway through the introduction questline, Rathian has you tag along to Blackwing Descent to find some old black dragonflight belongings to help craft a form of defense against N'Zoth's corruption. The way this entire feature and system is introduced is actually fantastic. I really enjoyed the intro experience overall, and I think they did a great job leading us into each different part of patch 8.3. The Cloak becomes a necessity because we encounter one of N'Zoth's visions and we're almost entirely overwhelmed. No one knows how to handle this new form of attack until Rathian steps in with his plan. After you acquire the Cloak, which obviously isn't quite as straightforward as Rathian thought it was going to be, you delve back into that same vision that overwhelmed you before and push through to achieve a minor victory. When we just had visions plop down in front of us and were basically told, this is a cool new thing, go test it and have fun, without any lead up or really knowing what these visions were supposed to represent or even what we were supposed to be getting out of them, that was quite strange, but after the intro quests it makes perfect sense, which is why I say they do a great job of telling a story in patch 8.3, which really surprised me. With all of the Shadowlands information and hype, I wouldn't have been surprised if the dev team just kind of glossed over patch 8.3 and focused more on the next expansion, but that doesn't seem to be the case and it makes me very happy. But anyway, back to the legendary Cloak. You're more or less given it for free, you don't have to do anything significant to get your hands on it, but what is going to be important is upgrading it. That's where the grind is going to be. The Cloak starts at item level 445, it has the 3 main secondary stats on it, your primary stat obviously, and then 2 key extra features. The Cloak will reduce the effects of any and all sanity loss by 5%, that will be significant for Visions of N'Zoth, horrific Visions of N'Zoth, and certain raid bosses in the upcoming raid tier. The more you upgrade your Cloak, the less sanity you will lose, the longer you can stay in Visions, or the more likely you are to survive certain raid mechanics. The other key bonus you get from the Cloak is corruption resistance. This is the first we've seen of this, hopefully it's going to be on a few other pieces as well, but it starts with +5, and as you upgrade it, we're assuming that will get higher and higher. The main source of corruption from what we know so far is the corrupted gear. This is going to be replacing Titan Forging in patch 8.3, and there are a whole collection of powerful bonuses you can get from gear becoming corrupted. Extra crit chance, extra haste, extra crit damage, leech, damage reduction, you name it. The downside of corrupted gear is that it also increases your corruption. At certain thresholds you'll start noticing really dangerous debuffs and negative effects. Corruption resistance is there to counteract the corruption on gear, so you could equip some powerful effects without having to really deal with any of the negative side effects. To sum up, the more you upgrade your Cloak, the more corrupted gear you can equip without killing yourself. So I guess it's also a good thing that we now have more of an idea about how we'll go about upgrading our Cloaks. Rathian will give you a quest which rewards a corrupting core. Using the core will empower your Cloak, increasing its effectiveness and upgrading it. There's going to be 15 ranks of your Cloak apparently, so that's quite a bit of upgrading we'll need to get our hands on. The Cloak will also increase in item level as you upgrade it, by the way, so the Cloak should always be your best in slot item. To complete the quest you'll need to acquire the Compendium of Nihilosity Nyalotha, Volume 1. The quest specifies that this compendium does come from horrific visions, so that takes a bit of the guesswork out of it, and in this PTR update you can't loot any monsters inside a horrific vision anymore. You used to get corrupted mementos from slain mobs and you used to have to loot them, but now it's just a counter on the right hand side of your screen for every mob you kill. No loot makes the run a lot faster, which is quite important as every type of vision is a race against your sanity, but not being able to actually loot something means the chances of this quest item being a drop is fairly low. It could come from a rare or an elite inside the vision, but if that's the case, you're going to have to pay very close attention to any mobs that allow you to loot them. I think it's more likely that this quest item will come from the reward chest at the end of the visions though. The first vision I completed after all the reset and the build updates, all that jazz, did have a torn page of Compendium Volume 1 in the reward chest at the end, but that doesn't seem to be all too useful on its own. The quest might require several torn pages be combined into the completed compendium, or maybe you have to kill certain mobs to complete certain objectives inside the vision. It's hard to test without being able to buy more visions like we could in earlier PTR builds. You're only locked to what you'll actually have when this goes live. When you look at the quest item itself, it does mention that several pages are torn out. Maybe it'll end up being worth something after you get the compendium itself, and I was also able to pick up a torn page from a compendium volume 2. So after you hand in the first one for your first upgrade, it looks like we will be doing the same thing again for our second upgrade. Either way, we'll be upgrading our cloak by taking part in the horrific visions of N'Zoth and finding these compendiums. So the visions are going to be a very important part of our character progression, as you might have expected. I also mentioned that we have some changes to the corrupted gear system. Previously, corrupted was a random affix, just how Titan Voyaging was entirely random. You either got it or you didn't. We had random effects, random tiers of effects, random ranges of corruption. It was a bit of a mess. I think we do have fixed corruption values in this build, but the corrupted gear vendor was removed, so again it's kind of hard to test. I know the dev team was talking about static values, so that's at least one layer of RNG stripped off the top, but something else was introduced with this build. The Nyalotha raid now has a handful of weapons that are always corrupted. That's an interesting twist on the system, and instead of pulling from the same general corrupted effects or bonuses as the random corrupted gear, these new weapons have their own unique effects. Anzigvra is an agility staff with the equip effect. Your auto attacks bite into the target's soul, dealing 2% of your health in damage and healing you for that amount. That's a really cool corrupted effect. It's just a shame that agility staffs have such a restricted class or spec pool. Guardian and Feral Druids, Brewmaster Monks, and Survival Hunters. That's kind of it, right? At least those specs now have a corrupted weapon to look forward to, though I doubt a single corrupted weapon will really do too much for them. There's a strength two-handed axe, and I'm probably not going to try pronouncing half of these names for reasons you can probably understand, but this one has an equip effect, gain obsidian skin, increasing your armor by 5%. Every 100% of your max health lost explode with obsidian destruction, dealing shadow damage equal to 1000% of your armor to all enemies within 20 yards. That's another corrupted power that's way more interesting than the passive effects we were initially introduced to. The armor and health lost factors make this perfect for a blood decay, and you could maybe get this to work on a DPS player as well, although standing in fire to proc this over and over again would probably cause your healers to just let you die on every fight. Next up is a strength one-handed sword. Your damaging abilities build stacks of searing flames. When you reach 30 stacks, exhale a searing breath, dealing damage equal to 5% of your health to all targets in front of you. These just keep getting better and better, don't they? It might not be the most powerful effect in the world, but it's way more exciting than increasing your haste by 1%. There's also an intellect axe, bit of a weird one that, quite restrictive, but your mind's true potential is unlocked, causing spells to grant you flashes of insight, gain between 1 and 8% intellect at all times. This reminds me of some of the old Darkmoon card decks where your deck would reshuffle and you get a more powerful or less powerful effect depending on your current card number. You could shift up and down all fight, but a bonus is a bonus. At least it's not a range of minus 8% intellect to plus 8% intellect, although that could have been a better option than the corruption slapped on there. And just in case you can't use intellect axes, there's also an intellect mace. Gain Void Ritual, giving your spells and abilities a chance to increase all secondary stats by 10 every second for 20 seconds. This chance is increased if at least 2 nearby allies also have Void Ritual. So gather up your healers, put them in a corner where they'll spend all their time whispering to the old gods, and they might get some extra haste and whatnot. The flavour of this effect is awesome in my opinion. The more people you have whispering to the old gods, the more likely you are to receive their dark blessing. Very fitting for this patch. There is a wand being thrown in here as well, much to my disappointment. Wands and I don't mix too well, too many ninja pulled bosses. But anyway, your spells and abilities have a chance to show you the ineffable truth, increasing the rate your cooldowns recover by 20% for 12 seconds. This one is going to be huge, depending on the proc rate. If this can proc back to back, casters are going to be so incredibly happy in the Nyalotha raid. And then the last one on the list right now is a bow. Your auto shots reduce the remaining cooldown of a random hunter ability by 1 second. Random, chaotic, potentially quite powerful, this should fit right in with an old god patch. So there are 2 major things that you've probably noticed. The first is that not everyone is covered by these weapons. If more don't show up in the future, I guess that's just a case of tough luck. If you're a rogue, sad to be a rogue. They might introduce more daggers, agility weapons, maybe. Other weapons might be able to be the other form of corrupted where it's a bit more random, but it should still be better than nothing. We'll have to wait and see on that front. The second thing is the corruption that all of these weapons come with. They're all the same, you may have noticed. It's a static 25 corruption for equipping any of these weapons, which is pretty hefty. That's a tier 3 corrupted item corruption value, which honestly is probably right around where I'd put these items. The effects do sound quite powerful, and all of them look to be a throughput increase. 25 corruption will give you the first 2 debuffs straight away, the chance to be slowed, and the chance to spawn a void zone under your feet. Thankfully, if you have the cloak equipped, which you will because there's no reason not to equip it, that goes down to 20 corruption with your base level cloak. Upgrade the cloak and you'll be able to get it down below 20 very easily. That's more than manageable, so it might seem like a high cost to run one of these weapons at first, but it's actually not too bad. The real cost is that you won't be able to equip many pieces of corrupted gear alongside these weapons, but I think the weapon effects are going to be more valuable than any of the other random effects anyway, and that's probably what everyone will use first and foremost. If upgrading your cloak to the max rank provides significant levels of corruption resistance, corruption might not matter all too much in a few months into this raid tier anyway. But that's all I have for you for the legendary cloak and the corrupted gear update for now. As more pieces of the puzzle become clear on the PTR and as I get more testing in, I'll fill you in on how things are going. What do you think about getting the legendary cloak straight away? What about the new corrupted effects on the raid weapons? Would you prefer more unique powers like this, or are the random, more general purpose effects more your kind of thing? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.